to the holiday sounds. Good morning. My name is. Whoops, hold on. Let me turn that off. Hang on. Yep, we'll hang on to the rocking around the clock. Good morning. My name is Michelle Mott, and we are delighted to have you join us this cool November morning here in Des Moines, Iowa. The topic for today's webinar is Stop the Noise. Get rid of the static and tune into life. So that's why we thought we'd play some early Christmas music to get you into the spirit. For those of you, hopefully, that are watching, if you have audio capabilities, please listen in with your phone or your computer. Dana is standing by. She's just a phone call away. If you have any technical difficulties, her phone number is 515-221-2688, and she can help you to get the materials as well as any technical snafus along the way. Because, again, we continue to get more people joining us, so welcome. I want to make sure that those of you who may not be familiar with this technology understand how best to use it. There is a couple of options of your viewing pleasure. You can zoom in or zoom out using the control panels in the upper middle part of the screen. The content is actually being displayed on the middle part of the screen, so we won't be showing any videos today, so it'll just be basically the PowerPoint screen. And then off to the right-hand side, you'll see that there's some places where you can become more involved in our webinar. There's a feature on the screen where you can see the participants, the name that you used when you logged in. I see Denise, Heather, Linda, Nikki, Ramona. For those of you who may not have used their name, we just see a call in, so we appreciate knowing who you are when you log in. And then there's another feature that's referred to as the chat box, and Dana can help me understand some of the things that you might be answering my questions with, or using it to ask me a question. So she'll pipe in if there's any feedback that comes throughout our hour, but that helps to make it interactive. The purpose for this webinar.
I'll say one thing. Sorry, Michelle. To everybody that uses the chat box, just make sure that you use all participants in the drop-down. Then everybody can see it.
Great. Thank you, Dana. All right. So as always, we have been conducting these webinars for I don't know how many years, but we do it as a way to offer some monthly motivation to our clients and participants and even people that maybe just heard of us in passing. So we focus typically on one of our inspiring programs or products to give you an idea of the ways that we have been working with our clients, either through what I or Dana facilitates, or in many cases, some of you might be trainers or consultants, and you're looking for some tools or resources to add to your toolbox. This particular webinar is going to identify the 3 most destructive or limiting thoughts, identify what might be preventing you from reaching your greatest potential or achieving your goals. And then finally, I created an acronym known as LID to help put a lid on what might be holding you back. For guidance, Dana attached to the instructions a couple of resources that we want to refer to. One is the handout packet, so this contains some of the interactive exercises that I'm going to encourage you to either complete during this webinar or stay afterwards. I know that a lot of our clients are bringing this to the workplace by setting it up in a training room or a conference room. So feel free after the webinar ends to stay afterwards and discuss or debrief what people are taking away from and answering any of the questions, so it really can become more of an application. And then, as always, we want to share with you our upcoming webinar schedule, and we've got one more in the year 2018, and we've got the first 6 months of 2019 announced, and we want to give you a little bit of a heads up because we are going to be changing the format for the upcoming year. As you finish or log out of the webinar, you'll be asked to complete a brief survey for our purposes, and what this does is gives us feedback on what you thought of the content, the education, as well as, more importantly, give us some suggestions for future topics. It's here that we truly listen in to your ideas or your greatest needs and slot our upcoming topics, as well as we've made some modifications to actually shortening our webinar from 1 hour, and next year you'll learn that we're going to be doing it in 30-minute increments, because again, our world gets so busy that we're learning that people like to have shorter time frames. So one of the things that I'm going to draw from during this hour comes from a book that I wrote called Attitude, the Choice is Yours. And this is an interactive workbook that gives you some content and even some exercises to help you understand your attitude, analyze your attitude, and we're going to give you some exercises that we use in a self-image inventory. The book also helps you deal with the difficult attitudes of others, and then I am going to pull out some adjustment techniques and maintenance strategies that fit very nicely into today's topic. But if you are interested in getting a copy of this book, or even if you're looking for a gift, I'll give you some information at the end that you can go out and order it on our website. And if you even would like an autographed copy, I'd be happy to personalize it for you. So first of all, I want to make sure that everybody is familiar with a basic definition of what is an attitude. Your attitude comes from what you think about. It's those thoughts and feelings that oftentimes will lead you to do something or say something. And most likely, as a result of those thoughts and your actions, you're going to get something or not. And you've heard the computer axiom, garbage in, garbage out. So with that basic definition, I'd like for you to think about, where has your attitude come from? And as you make this interactive, I'd like you to go out to your chat box and, like Dana said, change the flip down, the arrow down to be all participants, and then write in where you have learned your attitude or your thoughts. It could be from your childhood. It could be from your educational experience, from kindergarten. I know I had a lot of experience, a lot of modeling. In my first 2 years of school, I had my mom as my kindergarten teacher, and then the second year was in the Catholic school, and I tell you, these nuns had me for lunch. You might have also been influenced by a significant teacher or instructor or coach. So jot in your chat box, where has your attitude or your thoughts come from?
Ramona says parents, coaches, teachers, friends.
Thank you, Ramona.
Nikki, Catholic school. Denise says blend of parents, friends, and employers.
Great. Yeah, those first 18 years of our life are so fundamental to how we think, how we behave, and how we ultimately interact with people. So if any of you are parents, just be aware of those formative years are so critical. Many of you, and I can't tell if there is actually a gentleman on our call, because some of you that didn't identify, but, you know, ladies, one of the things you might remember is having a Barbie doll. In fact, I still have one of my Barbie dolls. And if you remember, Barbie was the perfect woman. She had no wrinkles, no cellulite. Everything was, she was dressed to the nines. And I think that a lot of times as a little girl, Ramona's no longer hearing audio. So Dana, you might need to help her out there. Sometimes we try to live up to that perfect woman. And it's very difficult because life isn't perfect. We aren't perfect. And so we need to make sure that we don't set ourselves up for failure, don't set ourselves up for frustration, not feeling as though we are good enough. So part of that early on programming might be some of the noise that we need to talk through during this webinar. This is an old-fashioned radio, and I found it as I was looking for radios, and it made me think of my father, who grew up on a farm in northeast Iowa, and he said one of his childhood memories was after dinner, of which his mom made from scratch. There was no microwave back then. On the farm, raising 5 children without her husband, because he unfortunately died at a very, very young age. They would go into the living room and listen to a radio station. Now, how many of you have kids, and how often have they been able to listen without being programmed into their iTunes or their Xbox? We oftentimes are listening or subliminally being programmed from our static. So I want us to stop and listen for a while or a moment into what might we be being programmed by. So if you have your workbook, if you would turn to the first worksheet that gets you to identify what is on your mind. These can be things that are affecting you in your day on the job. It could be things that might be affecting you with a project that you're working on. It could be something relating to a coworker that you're trying to figure out how to get along with, or maybe you've had a recent conversation that's on your mind. It could be relating to your boss, or maybe it's something that you're dealing with a customer or a client, or in our healthcare, it could be a patient. And then I'd also like you to think about what's been on your mind as it relates to your personal life. Now, I can't help but think that given a month from or a week from now, you're going to probably be celebrating the Thanksgiving holiday. You might be thinking about the recipes, or might be talking about needing to order that pie, or maybe you need to get your house decorated. I know last night I just brought in all of the Christmas decorations because I'm going to be out of town for Thanksgiving, and I would like to actually spend some time this weekend getting the house decorated. So whatever it might be, I'd like for you to again use the chat box and jot down some things that's on your mind, whether it be work-related or personal-related. And Dana, if you want to chime in on anything that you might be reading from them.
Ramona said unfinished projects and holidays, health, and well-being of family.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, that is this time of year where the colds and the flus. I have not gotten...
Sorry. Getting ready for Christmas, trying to use PTO and get all work done.
Very nice.
Increased workload, helping clients with needs, health, family issues, from Denise. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, as we come towards the end of the year, we kind of scramble to try to get everything done. However, it's also a very beautiful season, and so we can't let the things that are distracting us from enjoying the time, the moments that we share with our family. So I would encourage you to think about, are those thoughts positive or negative? Are you taking them on with the vengeance? Or are you taking them on with some resentment? So being aware of how you think about those issues can also affect your productivity. I want to share with you a couple of my favorite quotes. One from Charles Swindoll, that life is 10% of what happens to us and 90% of how we respond to it. The past is over. You can't do anything but learn from it and move forward. What things that are happening to you or with you right now are those things that you truly need to tune in with and learn how to make the most of it. The other comes from Eleanor Roosevelt. No one can make you feel the way you do without your own permission. So we're going to talk about how you might be influenced by what someone else is doing or asking of you, and you need to take some ownership to your reaction. You can feel positive and optimistic about the opportunity, or you can take on some resentment, but it is up to you with your reaction. Now, this is a nice exercise that gets you to think about how you respond to situations. And you can see it in one of two ways. You might first of all see it, opportunity is nowhere. 9 out of every 10 participants I show this to first interprets it as negative. Opportunity is nowhere. But if you looked a little bit further, you can see that it also can be interpreted as opportunity is now here. Two ways of looking at the exact same thing. And what I'd like you to do is not jump into a situation with a negative reaction. I want you to stop, reframe, and think before you speak. I want you to think about problems as opportunities, opportunities to learn how to do something differently. And it makes me think one time, I remember my mom, who wasn't the best in the kitchen, but unfortunately forgot to turn on the oven after she put the turkey in and couldn't figure out what it was taking so long. So it was just an opportunity to play some cards. I remember we pulled out the card table and we played some games and cards and we laughed along the way. So learning how to make the most out of it. That problems are merely disguised opportunities to do something different. And whatever is going on in your world or whatever you're going through, I want you to remember that it's okay to have an emotional reaction. We do a lot of work in the area of emotional intelligence. In fact, Dana has an opportunity for anyone who would like to participate in a beta test for an emotional intelligence tool. I know that she did a webinar for like an hour with a couple of our clients that we reached out to, we thought that would have an interest in. But if you have an interest in participating in a beta, I believe, and Dana, if you want to give a little bit of information about the time sensitivity to it now, that would be great.
I had to unmute myself. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The beta opportunity has started, so the facilitation material is available for you to facilitate, or we can facilitate it. It's the turnkey program, so there's all detailed information on what to say, how to work it, times and everything. There is a slideshow, and then there is also a beta assessment that you can take. And all of this is free of charge. What's happening now is we're getting down towards the last couple of weeks of it. They need to have all of your feedback by December 7th. So if you are interested and you think you can get this in, it's about a 3-hour is what they've timed it as program. So if you are interested, let me know.
Great, thanks, Dana. And it really is a really neat tool of assessing people's ability to be self-aware of themselves and others. But we do want to give you a little bit of exposure of that today, but I think this would be a great tool for those of you wanting to experiment and obviously give us feedback on a new tool. So thanks, Dana. But I want to leave you with, at least today, an understanding that it's okay to cry. It's okay to laugh. Those are real emotions, and it's not healthy to bottle them up. It's okay not to understand something. Our world is very complex, and I truly believe that it's important to ask questions. I tell Dana, I think sometimes I'm a pretty good communicator, but sometimes what I think and what I say is not in congruence. So ask questions. I'd much rather have you ask than assume, because you know what happens when we assume, right? Errors get made, and we oftentimes will spend time on certain projects or exercises that are a waste of time. It's okay to feel scared. We're going to talk about one of those limiting emotions, such as fear, and it's okay to feel scared or worried about something. And because our world is so complex, ask for help. Many people have gone through something similar to what you might be going through, and they're more than willing to share with you at least their experience. I oftentimes want to practice calculated neglect. It's okay not to do something. I know oftentimes in many years when the kids were growing up, would send out Christmas newsletters. It was kind of my one way to stay in touch with my family and friends. But because of my use of Facebook, I am not going to send out Christmas cards this year. So for those of you who may have be expecting a Christmas card, I don't mean to disappoint you. It's just that I think that I can make my time use other ways, and let's be friends on Facebook, and I'll wish you not only a Merry Christmas, but a happy birthday along the way. But it's one of those choices that I'm making. I also recognize the need that when I'm tired, it's okay to take a nap. I went through a sleep study and just got the results yesterday, and I'm moderately affected with sleep apnea. So I learned to tune into my body because if I'm not alert, I'm not productive, I'm not effective. Sometimes it's okay to say, I can't. If you don't have the time or if you can't dedicate the energy. In fact, I was just talking to a prospective vendor who I believe is outside their expertise. And I said, you know what? I don't feel that this particular request is the best use of your time and your talent. I'd like to revisit another project, knowing when to say you can't. And then when all else fails, I'm going to give you the serenity prayer, but I think it's okay to know that life is tough, and if you need to ask for some divine intervention, praying is a peaceful way of getting through life's complexity. So one of the tune-up techniques in the book that talks about emotional intelligence is listen to your self-talk. By that I mean not only being aware of what you say to others through words, tone of voice, and body language, but also tuning into your self-talk. The reason that there's a train on this slide is that you may be familiar with the little engine that could. And if you remember the story, the challenge was to take the engine or the train filled with toys over the mountain. And she didn't think she could, but she kept chanting over and over again, I think I can, I think I can. And recognize this. If you think you can and do something in life, with some hard work and determination, you will. But if you think you can't, you won't, because you've already given up on yourself. So learn to listen to your self-talk, and that's what we're going to explore today. Turn to the next page in your workbook, and we're going to explore the 3 most destructive or limiting noises that might be affecting your world. The first noise, I believe, is doubt. You might be distracted by doubting yourself. You might be saying to yourself, I'm not smart enough, or I'm not good enough. I don't have enough time to get it done. People won't like me or my idea, so I'm not going to share it. I'm not going to speak up in a meeting, or I'm not going to share the thought with my boss. I don't have enough experience. I remember when I was starting my own business at age 29, I thought, what am I doing? I'm a woman, and it's not typical that women own businesses, and I'm only 29. How could I possibly have anything to offer? But when I flipped my mindset to the things that I've learned and the energy that I bring and the passion that I have to make a difference in the world, that quickly discounted and got rid of that doubt. Other people do it or say it much better than I. So when you start comparing yourself to others, it's going to leave yourself with self-doubt. Definitely on the game of golf. If I compare myself to the professionals, I'm definitely not golfing at their capacity. But if I go with the idea that I enjoy the sport, I enjoy the recreation, every once in a while I get a good shot now and then, it's something that I enjoy. But stop comparing yourself to others that do it for a living. In the book, Attitude, the Choice is Yours, there is a 24-question assessment that you can answer. It's a multiple-choice self-image inventory. It measures your self-perception and your satisfaction in your life, and then there's also a scale that you can use to evaluate the health of your personal and professional relationships. So today I thought I'd give you a little taste of some of the questions. Number 7 asks, when I walk into a room, and I always tell people, go with your first results or your first thoughts. When I walk into the room, do I believe I make a good impression? I make a fair impression? I make an average impression? I make no impression at all? Or I make a bad impression? So when you think about walking into a room, and a room could be something, a social gathering, you're going to be walking into your family's home, when you walk into work. It could be a new surrounding or it could be a familiar surrounding. What do you think of yourself? And you just basically choose A, B, C, D, or E. Another one I thought we'd try out today is number 14. I experience enjoyment and zest for living. When you think about that from a regular perspective, would you say you have that sense all the time, most of the time, some of the time, hardly ever, or never? And what this tests out is your ability to feel or seek joy. I think that sometimes we look towards other factors, external factors, to give us joy. And wherever you are, whatever state you might be in, whatever you're going through in life, do you have that sense of enjoyment? Now, granted, many of you may know that I've gone through a lot of heartache with my parents' health. They both have since passed, but I know that as I was going through my mom's final stages of Alzheimer's, and when my dad afterwards moved in with me for 6 months, his final chapter was battling leukemia. It was what it was. I didn't wish it upon them. I didn't want it to have them go through it, but we learned how to make the most of it. In fact, I remember one of the fond memories was taking my dad to the Green Bay Packer game against the Bears at Lambeau Field. And even though he was extremely tired and worn out, and it was just a challenge to just physically get him there, it was a wonderful experience, and I have no regrets. And then this morning I asked Dana to pick a number between 1 and 24, and so the last question of the assessment says, when someone asks me to do something for them, I feel A, good, because they trust me to help them. I appreciate the opportunity. B, okay, I'll do it. C, disinterested in helping them. I won't respond immediately. D, bothered by their request. I'll resist accepting the responsibility. Or E, angry, I won't do it. Now, some of you parents might be thinking, man, I need to have my teenager answer this question. I will encourage you to think about giving it to a teenager. My stepdaughter, Mandy, was 18 at the time my book came out, and she took it with a cup of coffee or tea, and it was one of her best reads, she said. It really does help people start to realize that they have a choice of their emotions. And then they tally up the score, and it gives them an idea of to what degree do they feel rejected or inadequate? To what degree do they have a negative or acceptable self-image? Or if they're rather inflated, they might need to check their ego. The other part of that assessment looks at your attitude towards others. So on a spectrum, you're to determine at home, how do you feel or how do you think about your spouse or significant other, your children, your parents, your siblings. And I think that that's really important going into the holiday season. You know, this is a beautiful time to reconnect with your family, even with your friends. And are you looking forward to that time together, or do you dread the obligation? And so it's all in the way you approach those relationships. And then at work, since you spend so much of your waking hours, how do you feel about your boss? Do you resent what he or she asks of you? Or like that question, do you take that on with authority to say, you know what, I'm being asked to do something because that's my job. I'm supposed to do those things. That's what I'm getting paid to do. Or do you feel as though some of those requests coming from your boss or your coworkers or customers as a distraction to your priorities? Think about your boss, your coworkers, your customers. Your job is your priority. It's your paycheck. So then the second most destructive noise that you might be facing occasionally throughout your day is living in fear. So fill in the blank as you're going through this worksheet. Some statistics I want you to realize is that, first of all, facing what your fear is. Mine is a fear of heights. Just the thought of walking a tightrope would just make my palms sweaty. I had a girlfriend recently do a high ropes course, and she sent me a video about her experience, and I could just feel my heart racing as I was watching her. Knowing that, though, however, I know that one of the things that I do on a regular part of my career is getting on an airplane. In fact, this holiday season, I'm dating a gentleman who actually flies, and so we're actually going to be flying down. In fact, Dana did a travel, and I'm laughing because we did have a little bit of a situation on the plane. I failed to secure the door, and it was a little scary. And I know that we all kind of faced our fears, but I always believe that if it is our time, it is our time, and we have a fun doing it. Now, to face my fear, one of the things that I'm going to do, and I haven't scheduled it yet, is to skydive, because I feel like that would be truly a great test to overcome my fear. So whatever the fear is, face it. I want you to type it in the chat box, and then what is it that you would do to tackle it face on? Now, it could be a fear of public speaking. I know that one of the greatest fears that people have is getting up in front of an audience. So maybe what you want to do is learn how to present or train. And then Dana, if you want to chime in on what any of the responses are.
Okay. I'm scared of heights as well. But I can get on the ladder and put up Christmas lights.
That's good.
When I was little, my grandpa made us climb up the corn crib. We had no other option.
Oh, wow.
So that was a little scary.
Up a ladder?
Yep.
Yeah.
Denise said, being without significant other as I grow old. Aw, true.
Oh, yeah. That is true. Yeah, the holidays without my parents is much different, but I've learned that I bring my friends into my world and they become my family. All right, well, whether there's more coming in, feel free to chat in, but otherwise, just know that fear can be real if you acknowledge it, face it, and it will oftentimes help you to overcome it. Studies have shown that of the things that you fear, only 40% never happen. You know, planes crashing, yes, we hear about it on the news, but when you think about how many planes are in the skies, you're more likely to have a car accident than you are a plane accident. 30% of what you fear are already in the past, 12% are needless, 10% are petty or small, only 8% are real and may even be resolved, if at that. An acronym for fear is false evidence appearing real. We can let it consume us, or we can let it just be a part of what we think about but overcome. In my book, one of the things that I'd help people with their fears is to plan for the worst. So I remember when I was starting my own business, again at the age 29, I was truly afraid that I was going to fail. And with this three-step process, you take a look at what's the worst thing that could happen. So if I started my business, the worst thing that could happen is that I don't get enough money to pay my bills. So if that happened, what would I do? So what I decided to do is I would give myself 6 months. I would give my all to my energy in finding clients for 6 months. And if at the end of the 6 months I didn't obtain a client, or I didn't feel as though I was going to be earning enough to pay my bills, I would go back and get my resume up to date, and I would go job hunting. So then the last question is, even if the worst thing that happened could you cope with it? And if you step through that, typically, most likely, it is something that you could deal with. My grandfather, who was Irish, had a wonderful verse that dealt with a stone, and he always carried around a stone in his pocket, and it wasn't until later that I realized why. There's an Irish stone, and the verse is going to help you calm some of your fears or anxieties. And it goes like this. In life, there's only two things to worry about: You are either sick or you are well. If you are well, you have nothing to worry about. If you are sick, then you only have two things to worry about. You're either going to get better or you're going to die. If you get better, you're not going to have anything to worry about. If you die, well, then you only have two things to worry about. You're either going to go up or you're going to go down. And if you go up, you're not going to have anything to worry about. And if you go down, you're going to be so busy visiting old friends, you're not going to have anything to worry about. So every once in a while, I kind of think about that, and it puts a little chuckle in my cheek. And then the last destructive noise that might be affecting your focus is being limited by hate. Now, I really don't like that word because it is a bit harsh. If you'd like to refer to it as the things that you dislike, but I want you to be real with what that might mean. On your worksheet, there are some things that you might have strong or negative feelings about. And I'd like you to just go through and just do a check mark. Maybe you don't like doing a part of your job. Maybe it's the filing. In healthcare, it might be the code brown. It might be things that you regret or have a difficult time doing. Maybe it's a coworker that's a little bit difficult. But I will tell you, you don't have to like everyone you work with. However, if you can take an attitude of accepting them and understanding them, it's going to be a lot easier to spend your work day with them. Maybe you don't like your boss. Now, I always tell people, you can quit your job. Get a different job. You might find a different boss would make things better for you. You don't, again, have to like them, but you do have to respect the need that they have for you to do the job. Maybe it's a family member. Maybe it's an in-law. Maybe it's an outlaw. And just remember, if it's the holidays you're going to be spending time, it's not forever. It's just one day, or maybe it's an afternoon. So suck it up. Do your best. Make the most of it. Sometimes people judge others. Now, you may not be as aware of this, but I want you to recognize that you pass judgment to other people. Just because someone looks different than you, I will give you an example. I unfortunately twisted my ankle last weekend, and I've been on crutches when I go out in public. And so yesterday I had to go to the grocery store, and I thought, you know what, this is going to be really difficult trying to manage a cart and crutches. So I ended up borrowing one of those motorized carts, and it was amazing how people disconnected from me. It was really weird. It was almost like people either avoided me or there was little to no eye contact. So what I'm telling you is be aware of people, whether they're injured, whether they are a different size, they look or they dress different than you. Don't discount them just because they are not like people that you better connect with. Maybe you respond differently to different types of people, men, women, different nationalities. Maybe you have a challenge by losing or not having something. You feel like you don't or you're inadequate because you've lost someone, whether it's a significant other, maybe you've lost something, maybe you've lost a job. We had a meeting yesterday with someone who recently got terminated, and I know that it's very difficult because getting laid off was a very significant event. And like I said, dealing with an emotional event, and it could be positive, such as a job loss, or maybe it is something that is very exciting to you. But be aware that some of these instances can oftentimes factor in to your ability to connect or get through. As it relates to relationships, one of the tune-up techniques I write about in the Attitude book is to learn how to value relationships. And I give that to you moving into the holiday season. Thanksgiving is a wonderful reminder that we need to think about the things and the people that we appreciate. And having an attitude of gratitude is truly very peaceful and also very recognizing and builds the rapport of others. And when you need some severe adjustments, feel free to use one of our attitude adjustment bands to snap out of it. Stop your stinking thinking, or if you're dealing with others, allow them to give you a snap to keep you in line. Now, one of the ways on the next page we want you to use on a daily basis is seeking comfort with change. When we work with an organization, it's typically because they are responding to or they need to make a change. And the tune-up technique called seek comfort with change is almost sounds like an oxymoron, putting two words in the same sentence that don't go together, kind of like pretty ugly or jumbo shrimp. And what I want you to do is recognize that change is happening at a more rapid rate than ever before. I want you to know that there are three choices of dealing with a change. It could be a change of jobs, it could be a change of relationships or responsibilities. The first thing that you can do is recognize that you could change the situation. So let me give you an example. If you have lost a job, you could change the situation by getting a part-time job. Okay, so maybe you're not working full-time, but I can't remember how many help wanted signs, especially this time of season, to work retail. I did that when I was in high school. So one of the things you could do is go get some part-time help or get some part-time job getting in some money. And who knows, while you're there, you might learn something that's full-time. Another way of reacting to change is to change the other person. Now, this one's a little bit difficult because it's very difficult for you to change yourself, let alone try to change someone else. 2 months ago, we talked about a new program that we just launched called Attitudes, dealing or resolving difficult situations in the workplace. And this does make an effort to use a 5-step process for learning how to communicate with someone else to let them realize that their behavior is affecting or causing a situation that should be resolved. And then the last choice when dealing with change is probably the one that you have the most influence of, and that is just to learn how to simply change your attitude. Change the way you're thinking about the situation, about the change itself. Learn that if you're not changing, you're not growing. So think of it as an opportunity to learn how to do something different. Typically, when you are faced with change, if you really to boil down into what people fear or resist change, it's because you feel as though you've lost control. And I think it's important for you, if you are going through a change, I'd like for you to complete the exercise by identifying, given the change that you are facing, what are the things of that change that you can control, and what are the things that are affecting that change that you can't. So, for instance, let me give you some examples. You can't change the weather. We live in the Midwest. Dana and I love the beach. So we've got to realize that, you know what? We can't change the fact that most likely the next couple months are going to be colder. But what we can do is dress appropriately. I've brought out my boots. I brought out my corduroys, brought out my sweatshirts, so I'm prepared because I hate to be cold. And then I also just recently put in my ice scraper in my car. I've also just got my car tuned up so I can make sure that it's running properly. Another example is you've got to realize that you can't change people. There are going to be people in your life, both personally and professionally, that are going to be more difficult to get along with than others. And what you can do, however, is change how you think about them and how you communicate with them. And then the last example I thought I'd give to you is that you can't predict the future. You know, I know that there's nothing better than to think about what's going to be happening in 2019. Or as some of you might be like me, looking at retirement. What will retirement look like? You can't predict it. There's no guarantees. But what you can do is prepare for it and enjoy the present. So one of the things I've recently done this year is I had my financial planner put together a prosperity plan. And it was a way that I took a realistic look at my financial situation and what might my retirement look like and when could I really seriously consider it. The attitude maintenance strategy that I give to you that's in the book is to learn how to enjoy the moment. The past is history, the future is a mystery. Learn how to be present and realize that you don't get a second chance of getting the most out of today. Learn how to appreciate it. You are blessed to enjoy it, and learn how that you can't change the past. You can only use it to learn and prepare you for the future. And then the last part of this section I give to you comes from the Serenity Prayer. If this helps you learn how to repeat it over and over again, God grant me the serenity or the peace to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. All right, well, the last exercise I want to give to you is to learn how to put a lid on some of the noise that you might be facing. So the first step of the acronym LID is to listen to the noise. So on the blank line, if you're following along in the worksheet, write down the phrase, listen to the noise. What that means is, what is the message? So is it a message of doubt? Is it a message of fear? Or is it a message of hate? And where is that coming from? Is that something that you've been listening to since you were in third grade? Is it something that maybe you watch too much murder mysteries, or you watch too much news and it's all about the bad things? Or is it something that, for instance, you just believe that you dislike? And I'm going to give you an example. I believe that I don't like pecan pie, or pecan if you're from the South. And that particular pie happens to be the guy I'm dating's favorite pie. And rather than having a pumpkin pie, which is my dad's favorite, he wants to have a pecan pie. So I want to move into the next message thinking that I really don't know where the fact that I don't like pecan pie came from. Maybe I don't like the look. Maybe we were never exposed to it growing up. I'm really not sure about it. So the last question is it real or is it valid? I'm not sure. But what I am going to do is embrace that fear, and I'm going to try out pecan pie this holiday season. I might even like it. Investigate the noise. So one of the things that I've exposed you to is what that noise might be. And I want you to think about that. Is it coming from your past? Is it an old tape? Is it something that you have on auto replay that you need to learn how to stop and erase? Or is it something that you've just learned or been exposed to? Maybe it was something that you were just made aware of. How are you or others affected by it? And I guess the investigation that I can use as an example is my sleep apnea. My girlfriends have been telling me that I needed to look at my sleep patterns, because if I'm, and I hate to say this, but if I'm not fully engaged in a conversation, I can fall asleep. I can even say that I get sleepy when I'm driving. So I'm a fear of having accidents, and oftentimes if I'm going down the path of sleep apnea, I know that that can cause some health issues relating to heart. My mom having Alzheimer's, I know that that also affects the quality of the oxygen in the brain. So I do know that there is a potential risk for my health. So where can you go for advice? I went to a sleep clinic, and I basically had my primary care doctor give me a referral to the Iowa Health Clinic, and I went and I was evaluated. I did a sleep study. So I want you to investigate and learn more about your fear or your doubt. And if it is something that you can learn more about, it will help you better follow through in step number 3. Step number 3 is to do something. And once you learn about the situation, it might not be real. You might need to just learn to forget about it. Don't let that thought rent space in your brain. Don't let it consume you. Don't let it bind you. Another might be to develop a plan. So now, as a result of going to my sleep study, I am going to need, my understanding is I'm going to need to purchase a CPAP machine. And so I will learn more about that as a follow-up appointment. Ask for help. I know that I've got a good friend who's been using a sleep CPAP. And I know one of the things I've been concerned about is if I have to carry a CPAP machine when I'm traveling, I need to learn how I can cart it along, and I've learned that it actually is something that doesn't count as your luggage. Learn to laugh. When in doubt, learn to laugh about it, laugh at yourself. I know that, what I oftentimes need to do. Yesterday I had got a kick out of being in that motorized cart, and I put a little video and I sent it to Dana and some of my other friends about my experience, if this is what the golden years is all about. And then finally, learn to build your self-talk with positive affirmations. I've given you a couple of examples that you can use to help fill your noise with more positive versus negative thoughts. The Nike approach, just do it, or trust the process. This too shall pass. I will survive, one day at a time, or persistence prevails. Any of those positive self-talks or affirmations can help you replace any doubts, fears, or hate with more positive affirmations. The tune-up technique I write about is called stop shooting on yourself. Sometimes we live in a fear or guilt or regret. And this tune-up technique helps you to learn how to tune in to something that you should be doing, and again, putting a lid on it by listening to it. If it's something that you should do, maybe you need to send out I'm going to give about an example. We should reach out to all of our clients with a holiday greeting. In fact, Dana and I talked about doing that next week versus waiting until the Christmas holidays. So something that we will do is to draft a simple message of gratitude and send it out to our database. However, if it's something that you've been thinking you should do that's not important to you or to someone else, forget about it, because otherwise it's guilt and it will eat you alive if you regret it. So I encourage you or challenge you to hold yourself accountable. In the chat box, I'd like for you to think about something that you should do personally or professional between now and the Thanksgiving holiday. So you've got less than a week to do something that's been on your mind, something that I want you to tune into, and jot it in the chat box. So something that I said I should do and will do is decorate my house for the holidays, since I'm not going to be down or here for Thanksgiving. And Dana, if you want to state what you should do and will do, unmute yourself as well.
Sean said lead team building exercise. And I said get the holiday greeting email composed and sent.
Thank you. And realize there's no such thing as too trivial or too small. If you think it's important to you or your value systems, do it.
Ramona said clean the entire house. And Denise said, I also am going to decorate my house as I will have assistance this weekend.
Oh, awesome. Well, it sounds like some of you are going to be entertaining at the holiday time. So what I really hope we did during this hour is to help you tune in to the static and get the most out of life. If you've got any questions, feel free to call or email us. As I mentioned, Dana will be happy to give you more information about that emotional intelligence beta test. But if you would fill out the evaluation, she can follow up with you. As always, we want to leave you with an opportunity to get a copy of that book. If you've not read it, it's a real quick, simple read. It also makes a great gift for yourself, for your family or loved ones, teenager, coworker, or even a nasty neighbor. We also, in the handout, have given you an overview of the Stop the Noise as a workshop. So if you're wanting to bring this to your organization, or maybe you're a program coordinator for an association, we'd love the opportunity to help others stop the noise and get rid of the static and tune into life. And then, as always, we want to invite you to continue joining us for upcoming webinars. We've got one more for this year on December 21st, Discover Strategies to Get Along and Get Things Done. We are going to expose you to a Everything Disc workplace tool. So if any of you are familiar with Disc, we're going to use one of the new families known as Everything Disc that helps you to apply the concept in a particular environment. And then, as I mentioned, we are going to be changing the format in the new year. So on the flyer that Dana gave to you, there is the new format described that we're going to do it now 3 times, 30 minutes in length at the top of the hour, 9, 10, and 11 o'clock Central Standard Time. So feel free to share the schedule with others. Dana is going to open up the registration a little bit differently than we did last year. So Dana, do you want to explain how that's going to work differently this year or this coming year?
So some of you may have noticed when you go to the website to register, you can only register for the most current or recent upcoming webinar. So each month you'll have to go in and register for that month's webinar.
Great, thank you. And I think you're going to do it like 30 days out?
Correct.
All right, great. So we're going to just basically do it. We're going to open the registration up 1 month before each webinar. I think it'll just help us be dealing with more real time and improves our registration process. However, if you don't agree, let us know. After leaving this webinar, you're going to be asked to fill out just a brief survey. Please do so, and then again, if there's any questions or follow-up, let us know how we can further help you utilize some of our inspiring solutions. So with that, I want to close, and Dana and I want to thank you for joining us today, but more importantly, we want to wish you and your family a very happy Thanksgiving, and may you enjoy the best of the holiday seasons and the rest of the 2018 year. Thank you for joining us. Have a great holiday season, and we look forward to having you join us in future webinars. Bye for now.